Hello there, faithful and brave Conscient podcast listeners. This is Claude. Another roundtable episode. Those who listened to the first one will remember that I sort of improvise these introductions like a radio show. The show must go on, so I have a bit of a script, but I'm also just talking to you, giving you an idea of what's coming. So this roundtable lasts about 70 minutes and was recorded on Sunday, March 16th, 2025 in Vancouver. And you'll hear the land acknowledgement in a few minutes, followed by a minute of silent contemplation. So normally, conscient roundtables feature a group of artists and cultural workers talking about their passions, fears, and dreams. And we actually did do this in Vancouver, but this is a special episode of Roundtable because it's in the memory of a friend and colleague who passed away on January 6th, 2025 at age 58. Her name was Tracey Friesen. So this is in memoriam, Tracey Friesen. And Tracey was a very joyful person, and that's the way to do it for her, but there were obviously a lot of emotions as we spoke about her. So, those of you who don't know Tracey Friesen, she was many things: media producer, media strategist, and most recently managing vice president of the BC branch of the Canadian Media Producers Association. But I knew her as a climate champion with the organization Scale Le Sceau, an arts and climate organization, and she was also a trusted friend. I spoke with her in 2021 on this podcast, episode 85, and I'd like you to listen to an excerpt of her voice, or some of her ideas, which I think will give you an idea of who she was.
And what's starting to interest me is stories of resilience for a post-carbon world. What are we going to need for our emotional well-being? What are we going to need? It's going to be a different world not long from now if we do this, and we have to do this. This transition has to happen, and there's going to be a sense of loss and sacrifice and challenge, not just with what's happening externally from a climate point of view, but in how we're going to have to, make changes to our lives and reorient our energies in terms of our advocacy and so I feel like there's an opportunity for artists. I'm more connected to the film and television sector and the documentary community, but throughout the system, to be able to provide realistic and yet reassuring narratives about what the upside of all this might be.
And you can also check out an amazing celebration of life that took place in Vancouver on February 22nd. On the traceyfriesen.com webpage, where there's a link to a YouTube recording of this beautiful testimony of many of her friends, some of whom you'll hear from today. One of them is a good friend, Jai Chua, and he's the one who helped me organize this group, and I want to thank Jai for that. So you're going to hear Jai, and myself, of course, Amir Niromand, Liz Shorten, Sue Bielli, and Lucia Declier. So we were seated around a table talking about Tracey. And there are a number of people who wanted to attend but weren't able to, but I know there will be other opportunities. So you're going to hear us talk about Tracey, how she was an exceptional person and how she influenced our lives. There's many good anecdotes, stories, funny moments, and some sad moments. And storytelling was very important to Tracey. She wrote a book called Story, Money, Impact, all about the importance of storytelling and how we need to amplify them. So I guess it's a type of mourning, but also celebration. And I think all of us have experienced this at some time or will in our lives. So some of the questions that I was asking myself is, How does one deal with the untimely loss of a friend or family member? What's the process of letting go and what you hold on to? How do we honor the memory of a loved one? How do we carry their work forward? So I want to thank this group of friends of Tracey for their generosity, their courage, and their wisdom. And that's it. We're going to listen to the episode. If you want to comment, please go to conscient.ca. There's opportunities there on social media. You can also write to me directly, claude@conscient.ca. And if you want to share it in your networks, you're more than welcome. Write a review, any of that stuff you can do at any time. But most importantly, this episode is devoted to the memory of Tracey Friesen and to her legacy, which is unfolding as we speak. So sit back, relax. You might want to grab a drink, coffee, whatever. And I invite you to enjoy episode 216, In Memoriam, Tracey Friesen. So thanks for coming, guys. This is a special edition of a Conscient Roundtable. It's only the second one. Today is Sunday, March 16th, 2025. And for those who don't know what a Conscient Roundtable is, I define it as a long-duration, informal banter with friends and colleagues about their passions, fears, and dreams. It's inspired by the innovative ways of the 1980s era CBC radio overnight talk show Brave New Wave. Some of you remember that. Participants are invited to tell a good story, many stories, and to expect to be, interrupted and maybe teased a bit in the spirit of banter, but not necessarily. I think of it as a good kitchen party. So today's edition is special, however, because we are talking about a good friend who had passed away on January 6th of this year, Tracey Friesen. So there's not a lot of joy there, but there is a lot of joy in our memories of her. And those who don't know her, I'd had a conversation with her in this very building 3 years ago, and it's episode 85, and that's a good way to get to know her work. She was a media producer, an art and climate champion, and many, many other things that we'll talk about today. There's also a wonderful celebration of life that took place here in Vancouver on February 22nd. That's available on the traceyfriesen.com website for those who are interested in that. So we're here to tell stories about our experiences with Tracey and how we plan to keep her in our heart and also in our day-to-day lives. What does it mean to have somebody like that pass and literally pass on so many ways of being and things to remember. What else I want to say here? Yes, we will start with a minute of silence, which I do at every one of these roundtables. And I invite those here to do it, but also listeners, wherever they are. The idea is to think about the traditional custodians of the lands and waters where you are. And here in Vancouver, so-called Vancouver, it's the traditional ancestral and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. So let's do the minute of silence, and then we'll start. Thank you. So why don't we start with Jai, because you're a host and we've known each other for a long time. I'm sure there's lots of stories to tell. Maybe you could talk a little bit about who Tracey was. But we can all do that, but just so that listeners have a better idea of who we're talking about. And then, yeah, go ahead.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Claude, for pulling this together. It's such a lovely opportunity to think about somebody that we love so dearly, and to sort of go through some of the stories that we can remember, because there are so many stories. I think I mentioned that I downloaded all of the texts that I had from her over the years, and it ended up to be 800 pages. But actually what was really fun with it is that I loaded it then into ChatGPT, and I could ask questions of, when did Tracey have that car accident in my car? And when did she help me with this and that? And that was really wonderful. I look back to the first time that I met her, which was 2006 at Media That Matters. And Sue I had met, I think, earlier than that. But we all kind of connected at that conference. And I think that was the first time I got a sense of the sharp light that she was and the insight that she could provide. And, of course, the quick, easy laugh that she would burst into at a moment's notice. Those things I really remember so clearly. And I think that the conference really brought together, I think, a lot of the things that were so important to her, thinking about the environment, about how media can actually impact a landscape. And I think that when I think of her, I do think of her laughing, because she was about 5'8". I'm looking around at people to kind of verify the height. Yeah. And, blonde hair, blue eyes. She was very, I think, always fit in her life, always was looking to get outside, run. We would run sometimes on the seawall, although she felt badly because she was so slow. But I actually really enjoyed those times because we would sort of talk and hang out. So those things, I think, continued for a little while. And then when she was at the National Film Board, Sue and I think one of the things, that is so nice about this particular group that you brought together is the interconnections that we all have had over the years. And so Sue and I proposed to Tracey a thing called Melting Silos, which was this idea that we would take interactive media producers and filmmakers and put them together in the same room so that they might have a chance to collaborate.
Knock up against each other. Learn some skills, the words each other used, how each other thought and worked, and start to innovate formats of storytelling.
Exactly. That's what we thought was so important. And I think that really was a very successful project we did for a couple of years. And I remember calling up Tracey, and almost immediately she said yes, as far as my memory is about that. She was quite positive about it.
Yep. She and I had done another program before that called Cook and Creative. Tracey's title, not mine. And that was a really sort of also another precursor of some of those interactive experiential workshops. But it really was Media That Matters that was the precursor to all of that, and where all the relationships started and friendships and learning about each other's skills and what we could do together.
I agree, and I think that was one of the things that Tracey did so well, was this combination of the personal and the professional. She was very able to kind of balance those things. And in the sense of being on the professional side, she was never shy about telling you when your work wasn't up to snuff, when things needed to change. She was quite clear about it. Exactly, and I think that being able to be her friend she was just so great at giving bad news, as I've said before. She was good at bad news. And in a way, like, for example, for me, the NFB hired me to do, I forget what they call it, Discover It or... Discovery. No, it's like some other word.
It's very NFB.
Yes, exactly. Anyhow, it was basically discovery. Pre-production on a project, and just in a nutshell, basically, I was at a funeral when I got a call from our tenants downstairs to say that our house had been broken into. I came home and discovered to my horror that my laptop and a video camera and all this had been stolen, and it was unfortunate because I was actually I had packed everything to go. I was doing an Indigenous youth media workshop the next day. So I was kind of annoyed about it all, that it all got stolen. And I worked it out. But 3 months later, I got a call from the police that said that they had found my video camera. And I got it back, and on that video camera was an hour of footage of Indigenous youth and non-Native youth of the downtown and east side living their lives and filming themselves. And there was one very charismatic young woman who called herself Criminal, although she pointed out that she felt that she wasn't a criminal, even though she had gone to jail, and the rest of them. And it was an incredible amount of footage. And at one point I told Tracey about this, and she was really interested in that and invited me to turn it into some kind of project, which we did for a while until we sort of realized sort of belatedly, as I couldn't find these youth, even though I had spoken to a number of people that were involved with street level youth, that we couldn't do it because, of course, they owned the copyright. And I remember her kind of giving me this aspect of it, and it actually worked out really well in the sense that we were respecting their work. But we did work together on that project.
It was called an Investigate.
Investigate.
Yeah, that just came
Thank
to me
you.
as well.
Thank you.
Investigate.
So I think that after that, we really became close. I think that the way in which my memory of her was that as our friendship grew, it became one where I was able to ask her a lot of the decisions that I was trying to make in my life, because she was such a clear-headed thinker. She had such a great way of cutting to the essence of something and finding out really what the impact was. And I think for myself, I was one of the people that she would talk to about the things that were going on in her life, with her daughter, with work, the people that she was, involved with. And I think one of the nice moments that I remember is when the first time that she took me to Abundance Farm, and I met Amir, who's here today. And that was really incredible, because that was the start for her, I think, of such an important part of her life. With a whole group of people, she finally felt like she'd found her tribe. I remember I pulled out a little quote that, she kind of found that was, Amir's lovely. Good food and convo as always, she wrote me in 2020. And I think that the point of that farm was such a way in which she took the way that she felt about the environment and put it into an impact. It was something that she could kind of physically do. And I benefited, even though I wasn't, part of the farm, because I would get oftentimes the extra vegetables that she could not possibly eat, given the amount that was being produced from Abundance. And then I remember, too, in that same year where the CMPA, through Liz, had offered her this position, or had started to talk to her about it, and how excited she was. Tracey is, I think that Sue and I have talked about, wasn't much of an entrepreneur in that way. She really liked to be in the safety of an institution, and that's where she really thrived. And so coming back to CMPA, I think, was such an important moment for her. And during that pandemic time, obviously, there were so many things that were going on. And while we lived in the same building, we were very close, and she would come up in her pajamas, and we would talk and hang out. But then she had to make a decision about what bubble she wanted to be in. And I remember having that discussion with her, because she was like, should I bubble up with you? But I was with a new partner at that time who had kids, and it was hard to imagine us all being in the same bubble. So she was very excited to go to Abundance, and spent a number of months there. And that was, I think, a real important time for her, where she tied together a lot of the abstract ideas she had about the way she wanted to live her life and put them into practice. And of course, I really enjoyed it too. There was lots of drama at the farm, and so that was always interesting. But I think that, Liz wants to say something.
One of the things I really loved hearing from Tracey's mother at her celebration of life was that full circle, almost, that she had in an earlier part of her life, and for much of her life, I guess, into her young adulthood, there had been this community at the lake, and how one of the gifts of Abundance, in addition to all the things that you're saying, Jai, about the connection, the through line in her life and things that were important to her, excuse me, that it was this community again, that she had. And that gave me such a warm comfort feeling. I always knew that she had found a home there, but to sort of see that was a bit of a closure in her life, that was really meaningful for me. And it was a gift that her mom shared that at that time. And, while I've got the mic, I guess I would say many things to reflect on, obviously, but I had the privilege of spending more time with Tracey in the last 5 years of her life than I had in the previous 20 that I knew her. And all the things. I mean, she was a clear-eyed thinker. She was a great editor. And that red pen, right, Sue? But the thing that again, at the celebration of life that I came away with, confirming for me, is just her capacity. The capacity that she had to take people in her life, to show up for people, filmmakers, projects, causes, the earth, that there was just this incredible capacity that is what I take, one of the many things that I take from her life, that I'm always going to be pushing my own capacity and be inspired by that.
Don't push your capacity anymore.
Well, so you're leaving soonish.
God, I have so many stories about Tracey. It'd be crazy to try and document them all. But I'm sitting here next to Lucia, who is one of Tracey's daughter's friends. And so I kind of got to watch Gloria and Lucia kind of grow up a little bit by being the tag-along date, where Tracey and I would be the adults, and we'd have these lovely young women with us out for adventures. So, Lucia, I'm super curious about what you would say about Tracey as being in the friend-mom circle, because I bet you got some interesting stories there. I think
Definitely.
Perhaps a little unconventional.
Yeah, I think I definitely have a perspective of knowing Tracey as a mom, and knowing her kind of as a second mom to me. I was hanging out with my mom earlier today, and she said, yeah, Tracey was really like a second mother to you, in many ways, that she took care of us kids and was also a very cool mom and let us get away with just enough to play safely, but to get to play as well.
But that was important to Tracey, to come across as the cool mom, to come across as the mom that did things with these young girls, or as you aged older, that perhaps other moms wouldn't do, or conversations that other people wouldn't have. And I sort of got to be sort of sidekick, tag along for some of those, but also like weekends away and little adventures. And were you ever with us when we went to Harrison Hot Springs, one of our Harrison Hot Spring weekends? I don't know if you were. No, but you came with us to Salt Spring.
Sure did.
Yeah, and so that was one of the things that Tracey would do. She would invite me to be her friend as we took her daughter and friends off for little adventures. And you're right. Tracey would just have enough discipline happening to keep everybody safe, but maybe challenged these young girls to build their confidence
and independence.
Yes, and independence, and that it was anything could be talked about.
Yeah,
it was the conversation topics were wide open, and
wide open,
like they are now.
Almost too open. I mean, I'll just say, and I mentioned this also at the celebration of life, is I felt like one of Tracey's friends who often used the expression TMI, because I would get the recaps of various things happening in her life to the details that were sometimes beyond what I was comfortable with. But I think she loved that. She loved to shock. She loved to push the edge a little bit. She would have that little glimmer in her eye, and and I would just be like starting to squirm, and she would kind of like that.
She was mischievous with her storytelling.
Mischievous, totally. But she also loved to be adventurous herself and explore different parts of who she was, and had this deep kind of A, curiosity, but B, yearning, I think, to not waste a minute of time in her life, to always be experiencing, to always be building relationships, to always be learning, to be striving. She always had, and then she had this real estate thing that she would do where she would always be looking at real estate and the next project and the next thing and this. And sometimes she'd come at one point she was on about buying a houseboat. And I was like, I think that's too far, Trace. I think step it back a little. I'm not so sure you want to live. She had lived on a houseboat with Rory, her first love, for a while. But she was constantly checking the edges, going to the edges and coming back and reporting to me. And while Tracey could be extremely decisive and have a lot of opinions, she liked to explore every option and to talk about every option and scenario A, B, C, D, E, and then kind of adventure forth with whatever her chosen decision was at that moment. And her adventuring was everywhere, like even just her car, Hank, and when she took her class of how to be in the outdoors, it was like a multi-week outdoors class, and part of it was you had to do an overnight without a tent and without, I think it was even without a sleeping bag. So you learned how to manage and keep yourself safe. and then once she did that, she was off camping out in the bush by herself, going on these trips. And it was interesting to watch. I found that there was a point in Tracey's life, maybe about 8 years ago, where she started practicing Buddhism and learning about Buddhism and turning more inwards. I think she had very much been an outward person. But then she started turning more inwards, and she started like doing these hikes by herself, doing these camping trips by herself, doing these road trips by herself, where she would, dot along friends and have people come and go or go visit people. But she started to challenge herself to have more solo time. She would do silent retreats. And then she got up to the farm, met the farm folks, and I think the culture of the farm with a personal development focus then took her further into how to work on yourself, but in community. And it was a very, very safe place for her. And I think she could do that more at the farm than with her friends that she'd met through her work, because she had entered those friendships through a professional setting. But at the farm, it was the agreement right from the get-go was personal development and shared space. So I kind of feel like over the, I don't even know how many years, 30 years I've known Trace, I actually got quite amused with watching her go on a self-development journey as well. Adventure is just part of the word I would use to describe Tracey. Anyway, I'm curious to hear from Amir. We're all talking about the farm and the impact of the farm on Tracey. I'd love to hear some thoughts from you.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's I'm really appreciating hearing all of this, and in more context of more of her background that more, and it's kind of starting to make more sense for me. I met Tracey at 2018, so it's not that many years, although we dove in. But I guess one thing that I'm kind of understanding now is that the quality that you're expressing in terms of her walking on the edge, and how taking risks but being safe, and how well she balanced that. And I feel that was partly how she really contributed and held us at the farm, supported us there, is that because we're these creating something that is decolonial, out of the capitalist system, and at the same time we want to survive in a capitalist world. And that was right along her alley to really help us go to that eye of the needle and support us. And I feel like she was really our rock in terms of any aspects of, as you're saying, the conflicts and people and everything that was going on. And she was so good with it, with all the details and nuances, and had such an eye for all of those. I was actually just having a flashback in this space. Last time I was here was my grandmother was visiting, and of course we are looking for a place in the city that when grandma comes for a few days we have a place to stay. And Tracey worked with Jai, gracefully Jai offered his place through Tracey, And so we were staying at this, apartment with my grandma and my grand aunt and family. And Tracey would come up and stay. And my grandma, she's pretty judgmental. And she doesn't speak English. And she loved Tracey so much. And I'm like, I don't know how did that, she goes through. And yeah, it was just fascinating to see just her heart shining and how just she touched people. And Jai, you said something about how gracefully she challenges you and at the same time being supportive. And one piece that she that comes across very strongly for me is that I've been trying for now 6-7 years to write this manuscript about the farm. And she's been my red pen, read that at least 10 times. I'm ESL, I'm writing about something I have no idea about. And she just, without any hesitation, over and over would just go over it and, push me, and at the same time being supportive. And yeah, it's been just such a fascinating journey of embracing and reflecting on how she was. And I think I shared in her celebration of life, I feel like she's kicking our asses to be the best version of ourselves. The celebration of life for me was, I would say, a rite of passage in many sense, and in some stage of really stepping up more to my power, because she was the MC at our wedding, and she would be the person that would always correct my writings and say what I had to say. And then I had to hold space as the MC in her celebration of life, which was the first time I was doing it. And I was just really bringing that Tracey energy in, and, feeling that grounding, that the trust and love and that balance that she had with really doing things and sharp mind, and at the same time having the Buddhist practice and meditating, and then going for a run, and then opening the heart and going the kayak. Is just fascinating that how she really balanced those words. So I think that's really that grounded activism that she lived is really what I think is lit a fire on all of us to continue.
I'm going to say something that's a little contrary to that, though. And I want to say this also about this thing. In the past couple of years, Tracey was trying to learn to not schedule every moment, to not always feel like she had to be achieving. She realized there was a shadow side to that, and that she was struggling to pull away from that and back off of it. And she was getting some gains. It was really lovely to watch. But I think it's a caution that not to think you have to overperform, not to think that you have to do so much or be so much to so many people, because she knew also she needed to sit with herself. And there were things inside herself that she needed to address and heal. And she was working on that very courageously. But it meant she had to turn her focus away from all the external achieving and doing and serving, and be kind to herself.
When I was reflecting on coming today, one of the stories was actually of Tracey saying no to something, or ending something, which was I thought very, I reflect back to when both Tracey and I left the Story Money Impact Society board, and she had been the founder. I see her book here, and at least of the society. Sue certainly has carried that vision into an organization, but. I've been part of many organizations, nonprofit organizations, where the founder stays too long, where the founder gets kind of in the way of the new vision or the next vision. And while Tracey stayed involved with Story Money Impact, I thought it was I was actually surprised when she called me to say, oh no, she was going to join me in stepping off the board at the same time. And, I had been the founding chair, and so that was in some ways... not a surprise, I guess, but it was something, right? And I always respected her doing that to make a space for someone else with their, bringing their gifts and getting to work on whatever their passion was in the mandate of SMI. So
And that was the one kind of one of my examples of Tracey kind of trying to create space for somebody else and take care, for her to do the next project. So
I know Sue has to leave soon, so I'll give you a bit more time. But I just wanted to say that the first time I met Tracey, somehow somebody connected me with her. And she worked downtown Vancouver, and we went for a walk around the block, and I couldn't keep up with her. She was walking so fast and asking so many questions. Okay, what do you think of this? And what about that? And what about this? And what about that? And she was checking me out, seeing if I was serious. And I said, well, I'm pretty serious about what I do, and kind of fun, we'll see how it goes. And eventually she joined an organization that I helped found here in Vancouver, well, across Canada, but a lot of Vancouver energy called SCALE, which is an arts and climate organization. And she joined our mission circle, and she said, is this a serious organization? And I said, well, pretty serious. The issue is serious, and art's important, so, come help us. And she did. She was really great, very classic Tracey, kind, open-minded, visionary, practical, but also very patient. Not overly patient, because you can't be too patient, but she just sat there and contributed and tried to move us into that balance point between reflection and action. Always leaning towards action, but still knowing that there were moments when you have to think things through. We were working through decolonization and a lot of complex issues. So that's where I got to know Tracey, and after that became friends here in Vancouver. We'd go for long walks and talk a lot about Buddhism, because I'm a practicing Zen and now Qigong person, and so we had that connection. But I didn't know her as well as some of you, because it's only been a few years, but I think so many people, like hundreds, if not thousands, have had that kind of experience with her, whether it's a 5-minute connection or a lifelong one, immediately present in personal relations, and very kind. And that kindness, remember Sue, we went to see a film once, and she paid for everything, and why? Because she just felt like it. She just felt that that was the right thing to do, the gesture, the openness. Anyway, so I really appreciated her professionally and personally, and one of the reasons I want to do this today is to talk about people like that, who are a mix of advocates, activists, institutional workers, like making institutions work, risk takers, and very friendly. She talked to me a lot about the farm. So you have to come to the farm. I don't know, maybe I will. But she passed far too soon, and we miss her a lot.
Yeah, I think of the different ways that Tracey kind of would show up. I really enjoyed, I think, her zest for life. I think she had such a open heart for people and parties. And God, yeah. I remember one, Web of Change, we had a talent show, and I think for some reason, her idea to have me be part of a talent was that she would braid my hair while I did shots of tequila with a friend. And there was just no reason for it other than it was simply ridiculous and totally on brand for the kind of friendship that we had. And I believe that she really, I think also at a certain point, as Sue was saying, like she kind of realized that maybe drinking was too much and the partying was too much. She has a friend, Joey, that goes on these, she's a Buddhist, and goes on these incredible month-long silent retreats. And I remember talking to Tracey about that, and Tracey being really, so admiring of the ability to do that. And Tracey started doing a lot of that as well. And I remember sometimes she would call me, did I want to participate in a 2-day Buddhist retreat? And I'd try, I really would. And I'd go down and we would meditate together for the first little bit, and then there would always be a talk, and I would sort of tune out a little bit, or I'd go sit in the corner and chill out. But I really respected the fact that she did that, and I think she really was trying to be better. And I think if I think about what the kind of aspects of her personality I'd like to kind of keep going, was that idea of continuing to develop and thinking about it. She was asking critical questions of herself in a way that I think we all can do, which is, how are we in the world? How do we show up in the world? What is important to us? How do we make those things that are important to us real in the world? And so there was lots of things that she did that I believe were towards that aspect. When she passed, one of the things that I did personally was she had a tattoo on her right hand of a peace symbol. And I always, the peace symbol, I grew up in the 70s, so the peace symbol sort of passed me a little bit by. But I finally understood that she had it on her right hand so that when she shook someone's hand, she would pass peace in the world, which I really loved and I thought was such a beautiful expression. So I got a tattoo as well on my right hand, but I did an origami peace dove because I didn't like the idea of the peace symbol, but I like the idea. And I just thought that's such a great way of passing those little moments of peace into the world. And I think that the world is so confused and crazy right now that it makes sense that we're trying to figure out ways in which, in our own personal way, we can pass peace along. And if there's some aspect of the grand energy of the world that involves our small contributions to that through the things that we do, then I'm all for that. And that's something that I really remember that Tracey does and did for me, and I hope to continue.
Sue, before you go, any final words?
How do you, that's right, like how do you have final words? I just don't know how you have final words. Just what a person. And she was an important person to me for 30 years. And there's already been so many times I'm like, I just need Tracey's opinion on this, or Tracey would remember who this person is, or just moments where I'm like, Tracey would be a good person to go to this movie with, or there's a weird, event happening, she would go to this with me, and so it leaves a hole, and the only thing I can hope is that she's somewhere orchestrating for very interesting, wonderful new people to come into my life to fill all those little holes that I now have. And I think I'll probably be watching for new people to delightfully step forward and think that they're hand-chosen and selected by her.
As long as the geese don't get going.
Okay, Sue has left us, but we'll continue.
The first weekend after Tracey passed, I guess she passed on a Monday, but maybe it wasn't even the weekend. Doesn't matter. Anyway, I was walking, I live in Kitsilano in Vancouver, and I was walking in the West End towards Stanley Park, and there was this incredible rainbow coming, and I always thought the cover of her book, Story, Money, Impact, reminded me a little bit of I don't know, just had a rainbow-esque feel to it for whatever reason. Anyway, I didn't ever really associate Tracey to rainbows, but I don't know, something spoke to me about it, and I texted Jai to say, can you see it? Can you see it? And now I keep seeing rainbows. I was on a flight from Victoria on the Helijet the other day, coming back, and there was right beside us a rainbow. So, maybe she's talking, maybe she's showing up, I think Amir said it well. I mean, I think, that's her gift to us, is to continue to, live out whatever we're supposed to be doing in this life, to continue to do it. I know that, one of the conversations Tracey and I had over the past months was she loved being the cool mom. She loved that so much. She wanted more time, being the cool mom and spending time with Gloria and her friends. And she knew that Gloria had those beautiful friends and family, which gave her so much comfort. I don't know. I'm rambling, but maybe there'll be a sun, maybe there'll be a rainbow today. But so I haven't Googled yet what rainbow song, what's that? What is that? Like, what are the initial thoughts around a rainbow? But it does my heart good when I see them. Makes me think of her and her sparkle.
Yeah, thank you for that, Liz. Definitely the rainbow feels like, she brings a full spectrum. Yes, and I also wanted to speak a little bit to, I'm a new dad, and Tracey has been such a support to us, and like for us also having another parent that you approve of their raising a child, because you see their kid and how amazing Gloria is and what a wonderful relationship she has with it. They're like really friends, really enjoying, and the level of them, how much love she has, and it's been like we miss that like a lot, and it's been a blessing to be able to share some of those moments. In the first month of Calliope's birth, Tracey held her more than anyone else after us, and that cool mom, and that I'd love to hear really more, because that is it's I do feel a lot missing that for sure.
Just the mention of Gloria makes me smile and makes me cry, but it's pretty evident how cool Tracey is if you meet Gloria. Either Gloria, actually. Grandma Glow or Baby Glow. What a welcoming and loving family. There's so many memories that I can draw upon when thinking about Tracey and Gloria and the family. They welcomed us with open arms to stay at the cabin and be a part of that community. We'd watch the stars and sleep out on the deck, and Tracey would take pictures of us from above, of our groggy eyes. Or one of my favorite kind of Tracey stories would be that in grade 11, Gloria and I and a few of our friends really wanted to do Garibaldi, and hike it all by ourselves and be independent 16-year-olds. And Tracey said, okay, but you're going to need a ride up there. And honestly, I'd like to see Garibaldi as well. So she drove us all up there and hiked. She waited. We went hiking, and then she waited and then started off about an hour behind us so that we would be on our own and do our thing and be independent. But she followed just in case. And she stayed at a campsite just a little while from us, so that we were still putting our tents up all by ourselves and cooking all by ourselves. But then we met up like once per day. And I think even a bear went through her side of the camp. And we were like, Tracey, I think we should be looking out for you. You're all by yourself out here. We have like 5 of us. But that just shows, she is a mama bear, and she had so much love, but also wanted to inspire us to do our own thing and explore.
I love that story. Thank you for sharing it. It's just so beautiful that how she finds a way. And I'm curious if you have any memories of her setting some boundaries. Like, how would she do that? Because, like, I kind of see that it hasn't, sometimes I feel like that's my challenge, is that setting boundaries creates distance between the parents and child. But, Gloria obviously has had boundaries, and at the same time their connection is so close. So I'm like really very amazed by their connection, and curious that if you have any memories of that, I'd love to know.
As the friend of Gloria, I don't know if I ever received the boundaries. We got away with a lot, or at least we thought we did. I remember we hosted a New Year's party at Tracey's house on 21st, and it was pretty nasty the day after, to be honest. That house was in a state of disrepair, and Tracey said, I'll take off for the day. You guys just get cleaning, and I'll come back later.
Did you guys ever talk about boundaries?
Yeah, you guys got boundaries?
I mean,
with your kids.
Oh, I mean, definitely. Kids need boundaries. It's a way that they can kind of push up against it and feel them, so that they have a sense that somebody's looking out for them. I think that they're really important. For sure, Tracey had lots of boundaries, I think. I think that there was certainly things in her life that were new and challenging. I think that, when I think about her relationship with Barry and the way that changed over time, and then when she finally left Barry, there was lots of challenges that she had, and finding ways to kind of have boundaries in her own life to protect herself. And I think that Gloria was obviously such a key part for her of what she wanted to leave in the world, like the legacy that she always felt was going to be the way. And so many of the things that, Gloria experienced and went through in her own development, Tracey would, and I know Gloria will hear this, but, Tracey would endlessly worry and kind of ruminate about them. She'd talk to me about them. This happened, that happened. And, what did I think about it? And I would do the same because I have two girls. And so it was a really, I think, interesting to hear her inner challenges that she had. And I think that there was certainly the way that she presents in the world was so sometimes different than the feeling that she had inside. And I think that was something that she struggled with in ways, in that she wanted to be that person who could roll with the punches and, and be responsive and all of those kinds of things. But she still had, like we all do, so much worry and concern. And I think that she did, do a great job at figuring out how to express it, and to be supportive of Gloria, and to be supportive of her friends, to be supportive of me, and still kind of maintain, her own sense of things. I really think Sue mentioned her travels, and she really would go quite a far afield, and she would go in Hank, and there was Hank 1 and Hank 2, although they all became Hank, and that was her hybrid. I think it was a Ford Escape, and it was suited to her because what she had is a back out. No, sorry, but in the back of the truck, she had built a number of ways that she could carry supplies and roll out of bed, and so she could drive along with Hank anywhere. And then when she got her kayak, she could put that on the roof, and really was so mobile. She, for a while, she was using a Spot, which is this GPS tracker, and myself, Gloria, and Gloria would get, the A-OK today. And that was an important part for us all to feel like she was out and about, but still safe. And I think Amir mentioned that ability that she had to, be adventurous and yet keep herself safe. One time when she came to my cabin, she went up to Mount Robertson, and there's a really interesting series of huts that you can stay in and go along the way there. But she came back a little early because there was a bear. And the bear had been following her kind of at a distance, and she felt like that's not great. And so she came back to the cabin and spent a couple of days with us at the cabin at that time. But yeah, I think that, boundaries for children are so important. And I think that for her, keeping it, she wanted to be the kind of mother that she really felt Gloria needed. And that was something that was really important to her. And so some of the fears and things that she had, I think she had for herself, and like any parent, just kind of worked through them on her own, in community, I suppose, with her friends. And I remember when she got me to help with Louise and Liz's GoFundMe fundraiser. And I've done a number of them, and I think she talked to me because she really wanted some assistance with it. But that was the most easy one that I've ever done in my entire life. It just was incredible to see the support that Louise and Liz had. And it was for some cancer treatment for Louise. And that was really an incredible moment where Tracey's kind of personal impact on the world and the professional impact and all the things that she knew how to do really came to the fore in service of somebody who, she so cared and loved for. So that was a pretty amazing moment for me to be part of.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Jai. I mean, it's a number of years ago now, but just an incredible call to get that, this was Jai and Tracey were going to do this for us as, we were on this cancer journey, which, who would have thought, again, a number of years ago that Tracey would be on her own in a very different way. But it was certainly so helpful for us. And then really helpful, of course, that during that time, Tracey would drive Louise to her treatments from time to time. And so I think in a way that was one of her first exposures to, Tracey didn't know a lot about the medical system. And she had the privilege of not having had a lot of time in that system. So she had, I think, a little bit of a connection there with someone who was going, through cancer, and it would come over to our place, and during her very too short journey, to ask Louise questions, to ask us questions about some of the things that she should be considering or how she was feeling. And so we were so glad that we could be there for her. Of course, everyone goes through something on their own and on their own terms, but that was a deeper connection that we had, Louise and I had, with Tracey because of that prior bout with cancer. Thankfully, Louise has been clear for almost 3 years. And in part, I'm not in huge debt because that GoFundMe, as Jai said, was pretty successful. I think we raised $50,000 in about a week, which was an incredible, overwhelming thing, for sure. And the gift of community that I think we saw show up, continue to show up, but certainly show up at Tracey's celebration. And I've said to almost everyone that I've spoken to about that gathering, and I wasn't at the evening gathering, but I'm sure it was the same, could have been the same. I'm sure everyone who attended that gathering left learning something new about Tracey, right? She was a multifaceted person, and I think also everyone would have felt, wow, she made me feel special, and yet, like, every one of those people felt the same way in varying degrees, but she had that connection with so many. But I do agree with folks and with the change, with the turn inward. I always said Tracey could be at a, film festival after party, late in the night, and then the next day be leaving in Hank to go to do solo camping. It was interesting to see the dichotomy there, but I also think that she increasingly understood. She, like all of us, she had family of origin things that she was working out, and we all do that, and in varying degrees. But I think she was, becoming, a more her whole person. And I'll never forget having a conversation with her where she talked about that. Just as she felt she was getting her, can I swear, shit together as a person. She was dealing with this, like the whether that's a irony, whether that's a tragedy, but she was like, really? Like, here I am, it's actually starting to feel, that everything's sort of coming together, and I kind of know who I am. But I think from all accounts, I wasn't with her over the last week. I had the privilege of being with her, quite a bit, but she left in that place of gratitude. And I guess the last thing I'll say is that I think, especially with the celebration of life, and it certainly wasn't planned, but one of the through lines through what a lot of folks shared was gratitude. There was a real sense of gratitude, and a life well lived. And I think, again, that's certainly an inspiration for me to keep pushing to be that.
I'll just say that there are a few people who we invited who weren't able to come today, and we're going to give them an opportunity to add anything if they so wish. It's interesting to hear the stories about her last few weeks at the celebration of life, and also from Jai and others, and how dignified she was and continuing to be kind and present, and in a Buddhist way, but also all through to the end of life. A person who is able to connect with whomever, the service workers, helping them as opposed to them helping her. Those stories were very endearing and not surprising to me. I wasn't able to. I did get a call from her in October, and I didn't think she'd had the energy to talk to me, and she just called me up and said, I don't know if I'll be able to talk a lot, but how are you? It was always about the other person, right? It's like, how are you feeling? Like, how? I said, well, I'm fine. How are you? Well, So that's part of the beauty of somebody like Tracey, who knew herself quite well, I would say, maybe all her life, but in particular near the end. And it just makes me think about presence and what it means to be present in our work. Because, some people take the work so seriously that it becomes very stressful and tension. I think she took her work very seriously, but she was also, relaxed about it, and able to shift her energies from one thing to another where it's most impactful. And the whole notion of impact, the Story Money Impact book and all that work is an example of how can we increase impact. How I love that. The stories we told. We're telling stories about Tracey, but she was a great story empowerer. And I think there's a lot of that in my interview with her. She talked a lot about how we need to amplify the little things that we're doing so that people can really see the connections and feel hopeful, because the activities are going on. We just don't know enough about them. So professionally, she has had a great impact on impact.
Yeah, I wanted to also share a last thought I had. Sue mentioned how much she really, not cared about not wasting time and really having an impact and really making the best out of her life. And I felt like I wanted to share the story about also her passing. That was so powerful. We weren't able to, the core farm people to be there. We were traveling, and no one was at the hospital, and she had decided to take the concussion because she had no more energy, and just an hour before taking the concussion, she left us a message, and she just spoke to everyone and had a farewell and reflection and a closure with one by one with everyone. And I also heard that she had done that with the room, and that's wow, even I would say, what a death, what a powerful, talking about dying big, and the last act is just okay. Yeah, just wanted to share that.
Well, she was always organized and certainly tangible in her efforts to show love. I guess one way that she showed me love that I wanted to share was that, well, I knew her mostly as a child or a teenager, and she nurtured Gloria's passions and expanded it to Gloria's friends' passions. She kept up with us, and so some of the illustrations in this book I did because she knew that I liked to do art, and so a lot of the chapter starts are little doodles that I did for her, and that was just what a cool thing to offer to a 15-year-old to do and to be a part of. So she was always doing things like that. Dan Mangan, I have to mention, was basically Gloria and my Justin Bieber. So she did, on several occasions, make connections that allowed us to, even at one day, perform his songs to him. And that was kind of a life-changing experience for us. We were, I think, 14 and busking on Main Street that she put us together to do. And so we're singing primarily Dan Mangan songs because we love him. And Tracey comes by, "Oh, guys, you sound so good. Hey, I actually have someone coming by to see you." And I think we probably almost threw up in that moment. But there comes Dan Mangan down Main Street. And, nothing could have freaked us out and inspired us and energized us more. Gloria and I, we loved playing music together. It's harder now that she's across the country, but we shared some of those like incredible times together, going to see Dan perform on Salt Spring, and we stayed at Sue's parents' house, and she was always connecting us and nurturing our loves and our passions and just enriching our lives in so many ways. So I'm really grateful for that, and gratitude is very present in this conversation. Yeah, challenging us to be the best versions of ourselves and pursue what we love. Yeah.
I guess one thing that occurred to me as we were listening to people speak was just this idea. I remember Tracey and I hit the dating apps around the same time. So just to talk about that.
Information here?
No, the thing that was really interesting, and I never kind of thought about this until this moment, was the fact that she would say to me, she's, "Okay, I need somebody that I could go to a film festival red carpet, I could go hiking out in the wilderness with, I could be in a boardroom talking to a government official, or I could be on a farm digging up, vegetables. And the guy that I want to be with has to do all of those things." And I was thinking, oh yeah, that's a great thought. And I sort of kind of adopted the same thing for the women that I would want to be with. But what I didn't kind of make the connection with is that was Tracey too, that she could be in all of those different situations in a way that I always kind of recognize as herself. Like, I don't feel like in the different situations that I ever had seen her that she was any different in a way. And I think that's actually quite a gift, to be yourself regardless of the context. Now, obviously, we all go through different things, and I saw Tracey in lots of different situations, but that essence of who she was, being able to be out on the farm, being able to be in a corporate boardroom, being able to, be at a concert or at a film festival opening and still be uniquely yourself, I think is actually a really great aspect to aspire to as well. And I think that's something that I'll also think about when I think about her.
I don't know that I have that much more to add, but I'm thinking about our listeners who don't know Tracey and now to know Tracey a little bit better, and who are thinking of their own loved ones who have passed and how difficult that is, and how talking about them is empowering. It's a type of, it's mourning, but it's grieving, but it's also bringing us energy and to go on with our lives. And I really appreciate all the things that you've said about life through Tracey. And I was inspired by her, in particular when we went for long walks just down the way here, because there was a sense of completeness. Like, we would talk about family, we'd talk about work, we'd talk about spirituality. It's all interconnected. And there it was, life, love, pain, whatever you want to call it. And I have that with a lot of people in my life, but it's quite special to be able to connect with somebody just once in a while at that level of authenticity and engagement. And so I think she was a really special professional person and a very special personal relation, family and colleague. Anything else? Is there any final words, or we come full circle here, my friends? Sounds like maybe we have. Well, thank you so much.